Good evening, everybody, and welcome to episode 11 of Innovative EdTech. We are really apologetic for our slight delay to tonight's live stream. We have had another moment where we've been let down by our new streaming software. I'm slightly disappointed, but hey, we are here. We're only 5 minutes late, and we are ready to get cracking with a fantastic episode this evening. So if you are joining us live, thank you so much for being part of the Evolve EdTech family. Let's dive into episode number 11 of Innovative EdTech. Forms in your classroom. All right, so we're going to go and explore 10 different ways. Now, I put a lot of work in over the last couple of days to create the examples for tonight. I'm going to show you some little cheats, some little tips, some little tricks to make this a seamless process for you. Then I'm just going to remind you about some of the ways that you can stay connected with us here at Evolve EdTech and some of the things that we can give you so that you can really enhance your EdTech journey. And then we're just going to go through and explain what we're going to be exploring in episode 12 next month in December 2024. So let's dive into episode 11 of Innovative EdTech and get this party started. All right, so welcome to episode 11. If you haven't joined us before, thank you for joining us. It is lovely to have you here. If you are joining us on the recording, thanks so much for joining us. I love having a look at YouTube and just seeing how many people actually access and watch these. So thank you so much for being part of it. It means a lot to me with my little kind of side hustle here because I want to help you with your EdTech journeys. So if you are new or you are a regular viewer, don't forget that you can head over to our Evolve EdTech YouTube channel, which is where you'll be able to find the previous 10 episodes from 2024. And we have 10 wonderful, really informative, useful episodes there for you to be able to access. So make sure that you head over. Innovative EdTech is about helping and supporting you in the classroom. So we would really hope that you jumped over, you liked those videos, you subscribed to our channel, and you shared the Evolve EdTech love with all of your colleagues and friends and family, etc. All right, so that's all I'm going to do for the moment about promoting myself in Innovative EdTech. I want to dive into this because I think this is going to be an absolute cracker of an episode, and I'm really excited. So if you don't know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about Google Forms, it is another wonderful tool from Google Workspace. So Google Forms is a versatile and easy-to-use tool within Google Workspace that enables users to create custom forms, surveys, quizzes, and feedback forms. With its intuitive interface, you can quickly design questions, collect responses, and even analyze data in real time. So Google Forms, it's a perfect tool for you to use as an educator. It allows you to gather valuable feedback, assess your students' learning, create interactive quizzes, and even simplify classroom management processes. And the really great thing about Google Forms is it integrates seamlessly into those other Google Workspace tools that you're already probably using in the classroom. So you could be using Google Sheets. We can actually take all of the data and information from our Google form, and we can pop that straight into a Google Sheet. All right. We can use Google Classroom, and we can embed Google Forms into our classroom. And I'm going to show that to you this evening. So Google Forms is a really powerful tool that you should probably think about adding to your teacher tech toolkit. So we are going to dive in tonight and explore this wonderful tool. The really great thing about this is you probably have looked at this before, but it's so simple, so easy, and it's part of that Google Workspace ecosphere. All right, so tonight, as I mentioned, we are going to share 10 different ways that you can use Google Forms in the classroom. So 10 unique ways. Are these all the ways that you could use Google Classroom? Absolutely not. There are so many ways that you can use this tool. We just didn't have time to pop all of those into 1 hour, but we're going to show you 10 ways tonight. But before we get into showing you those 10 amazing, innovative ways to use Google Forms, I want to dive in. I want to show you where to find Google Forms. I want to show you how to set up a form, okay, some of the customizations, and looking at some of the settings that you really need to be mindful of when you are using Google Forms to make sure that you are getting the most out of it. So let's head over to Google Forms and have a look at this really powerful tool so that we can see what we can do with it in the classroom. All right, so I'm just changing my screen. All right, so the very first thing that I head over to my Google Drive. Okay, so drive.google.com. Here we are using the Evolve EdTech example. So this is my Evolve EdTech background. There is nothing special here that you can see because obviously it's all in folders. It is all nice and neat. It is not. I am definitely need to organize this. But this is where you're going to head to get started with your Google form today. All right, once you have come over here and got started, you're just going to head up to the new button here up in the top left-hand corner, and then you're going to scroll down here to Google Forms. All right, so obviously we have a little arrow here which gives us a couple more options. We can create a blank form, we can create a quiz, and we can also create a form from a template. I'm just going to click on Google Forms and just get up the back end here. All right, it is the generic Google Forms here with the Google Forms purple. All right, but this is what a form looks like from the back end when you are starting to create it. It looks really simple, but there's lots that you can do and customize with your form. So I'm going to start off here with this top box, which is obviously where we are going to put the name of our form. So if we create one now, let's call this the Innovative EdTech Sample Form. All right, we also have the option to bold, italicize, underline. We can also pop a link in here if we would like to. So if I want to bold that, I can do that as well. I can also pop a description of this particular form in. So if I would like to provide some instructions from my students, or maybe some instructions for my colleagues or my school community, if they are completing a form for a particular reason, I can pop that information in there. I also have these formatting options as well, including the ability to add a numbered list, okay, a bullet point, etc. there. So you have that ability to create and provide the title and name to the form, as well as some instructions at the top. Then this is where we start to build and we start to see our form come to life. So you can see here, I already have a pre-populated example option for one of my form questions. And this one here is actually a multiple choice question. So you can see here that we can pop our question in. Again, we have our formatting options. All right, we have the ability to add an image. So if you would like to add an image to your question, you can do that as well. I don't know what I will have here. Let's have a squiz. It's going to take you... yeah, let's take this one. It's something I'm going to look at with one of my classes in the next couple of weeks. It's a documentary, so let's pop that in there. So you can see that you can pop in an image, okay, that might be relevant to the question. We have the ability to change the alignment. We can change the image. We can add a caption. We can also remove it. So you can see straight away we have a whole myriad of formatting options just here before we've even dived into most of the options available. All right, down the bottom here is where you'll be able to add your options. So at the moment, this is a multiple choice question. So you can add your options. You can add as many as you like. You can also add this add other option, which is that one where we allow our students to type a response. Okay, we can also use images here. So maybe if you're working with the lower years of primary school, okay, you might decide to pop some images in there rather than text to support your students. We can also remove these options quite easily, okay? So you can see here that it is really simple to be able to create questions. All right, down the bottom here, you can see that we have the ability to duplicate the question. So maybe if we've got a particular structure that we're liking, we can duplicate that because maybe the instructions are the same. We can delete the question if it is irrelevant, okay, or we made a mistake or we'd like to change it. This one here where it says required, this means that the student or the person responding to this particular form will be required to provide a response to this particular question. Otherwise, they won't be able to submit it at the end. All right. So I like to pop that on because I like to make sure that my students don't just jump into the form, rush through it, and submit information that is inaccurate. So I like to make sure that the required option is always turned on in my particular cases. But that is a completely individual option for you to choose there. We have our 3 dots, which means we have more options. I'm not going to jump into these tonight, but we do have the ability to take our response and go to a particular answer or another section. We can also shuffle the options when it comes to the answers. I'm not going to dive into that tonight. I'm just going to show you some really simple, straightforward examples of Google Forms, but that is another fantastic thing that we might look at in the future. All right, over here on the right-hand side is where we can add our questions. We can also import questions, okay? We can add a title and description. We can also add our images. We can add videos. So we are able to add YouTube videos if we would like to include those. And we can add different sections, which goes back to that branching or, making sure that a particular concept is completed on each particular page of your form. So again, we're not going to dive too much into that tonight because that is a whole nother world, but we just want to show you some really simple ways. All right, if I head over here now, I'm going to head down here to, this is the section. I'm going to pop a new question in here. Now, the really great thing about Google Forms is it is intuitive and it will pick up most of the time what the purpose of the question is. So at the moment, it always defaults to multiple choice. We can change it just here by coming over to the multiple choice option. We have a drop down arrow here and we have a whole range of different options that we can use. So we have short answer, paragraph, multiple choice, checkboxes, drop downs, etc., etc., etc. So there's so much that you can do with this wonderful tool. All right. So that is basically how we set up the questions, how we format it, how we create it in a way that our students or our colleagues or our school community are going to access this particular form. All right, I'm going to come up here to the top and I'm going to move across here to the right. All right, the second button just up here next to questions is responses. This is where your responses will be recorded once people have actually responded to this form. So you will see these here. You can actually turn the form off so that it no longer accepts responses just by clicking this little toggle button just here. So you can see now it tells us that we're not accepting responses. which means people won't be able to submit that form. We can also link this to Sheets. So this is where it will open up in a Google Sheet for you. All right, so if you're collecting data or information, that is where you'll be able to create that. So we can create a new sheet, or we can link it to an existing sheet that we may already have. Again, our 3 dots always mean that there are more options. Okay, so you've got a couple of options here. Obviously, some of these are not available at the moment because this form has not been shared. So we've got a few options there as well. All right, let's very quickly head over to our settings. Now, this is really important, and we're not going to go through all of these tonight because we just won't have time, but you might decide to have a look at some of these yourself. So you can actually make your Google form into a quiz where you assign points, values, you set answers, and you can actually get Google Forms to automatically provide feedback and grade your form. And we are able to use that just by toggling this little button here on, and then we have a few more options that we can customize just here. All right. The next one here are our responses. So you can decide whether you're going to collect email addresses. Okay, you can decide if you're going to send the responses to the recipients. All right, a couple of other really important things just here. The ability to allow response editing. So do you want your students or colleagues to be able to go in and change their information after they've completed it? This one here requires sign-in. So at the moment, this particular form is restricted to my Evolve EdTech domain, which means that if you don't have an Evolve EdTech email address, you won't actually be able to submit a form. So if you are using a school-based domain, you may like to use that. So please just be mindful of that. We can limit the number of times people actually complete the form. So you have that option there as well. So at the moment, people are only able to respond to this form once. All right, our next section is our presentation. Okay, we can have a progress bar. We can shuffle the question order if we'd like to kind of keep it a little bit unique to each student. We can add a confirmation message that is received by the recipient after submission. Okay, we can show a link to another response. All right, we can do a whole range of other customizations to the presentation of your form using the settings in Google Forms. All right, down the bottom are just a couple of defaults here. So whether or not we collect those email addresses, and obviously just making those questions required by default. Okay, so if you'd like to make sure that those questions are responded to by your recipients. All right, 2 more really cool things just before we jump into our 10 ways this evening. I'm going to head up here to the top right-hand corner. So we've got a couple of icons which are really exciting. And this one just here, the paint palette, is your customization theme option. All right. Now, Google Forms have recently undergone just a major change, and they are now allowing you to customize your forms much more than they have in the past. So we can now change our text style for our header, for our questions. So if I come back here to our form, we can now change our font. Had a brain fart there. Okay, we can decide on the size of our particular font as well. So we have a whole suite of wonderful options which are now available for you. We can also add a header image. All right, I'm going to show you some header images tonight. So let's pop in this guitar, and it's going to pop in just up the top here, just to give your form a little bit of personality. You'll also notice that our color palette here has changed. Okay, this is pulling in some of those colors from this image here. Of course, we can always go to our color picker and choose another color if we would like. So we can really customize our form to make it what we would like to make it really pretty unique for our particular situation. All right, again, if you do make mistakes, we do have our undo and redo buttons, just like all of those amazing tools that we have out there. And we can also preview our form, which I find to be really useful, so that you can check it out. You can see what it looks like to the students, so that when they jump in there, you can go, yep, I understand. I can see what it looks like for them. So Is Google Forms really basic? Yes, it is, but basic is not necessarily bad. All right, we don't have a lot of fluff here. There's not too much to distract students. It's straight to the point. So there is our preview. All right, we do have our 3 dots. Okay, there's just some of those other options that we have looked at already. And obviously our send option, our big purple button up here in the top right-hand corner. Now, this is really important when it comes to sharing your particular form with your students. So we can send it to individual students or people using the email option. The one that I like to use is the link because I just find it to be a little bit more simplistic. We can shorten that URL, which does make it much easier. And we can also embed that form into a website such as Google Sites. All right, so we do have those options there as well. All right, so that is the back end. That was super duper quick, and I might look at the future, maybe creating a little course where I can show you how to use some of these and slow that down so much because there's so many cool things there. But I know that we have a smashing episode and we have lots to look at. So I just wanted to really quickly show you. It's really simple. You're not going to break anything. You're not going to have a whole heap of problems. It's really easy to create a really simple, efficient, effective form using Google Forms. All right, before we dive in, I do want to show you one more tip, and that is with Google Classroom. So Google Classroom, we know, is an amazing learning management system that you can use with your students. I'm just going to go and unarchive this demo class. I'm going to restore that. That is from our Google Classroom episode of Innovative EdTech if you joined us for that particular episode. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to jump into my class. Okay, I'm just going to head over to classwork. I'm going to click on my blue create button here, and I'm going to create a new assignment. All right, so I'm going to get my students to create, or actually I'm going to get my students to complete a Google form as one of their pieces of classwork. So again, I just pop in my title, I pop in my instructions, and down here there's a couple of things that I can do. If I've got a form created already that I have used in the past, I can attach that from Drive. But let's say that I am creating one from scratch. I can press create. I can create this in Forms. There is my form that I can now go in and edit. So it's just opened up to my form, which is really fantastic. So I can go in there and edit that. All right. The really useful thing that I love about this and is that each of my, I've opened it again. Each of my students will get an individual copy of that form, obviously, because it is a form. So it is a really simple way to be able to share those forms with your students if you're using Google Classroom. So you can create those forms within your Google Classroom ecosphere, okay, so that you can share those with your students. And I have done that this year, and it was super simple, super effective, and my students were able to complete that nice and quickly. All right, so that was just a very, 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 very quick introduction to the back end and how you could use Google Forms with Google Classroom. So what we're going to do now is we are going to dive in to having a look at 10 different ways that you can use Google Forms. As I mentioned, these are not anything that is out of this world, okay? These are really simple ways. I didn't want to make this more complicated than it has to be, but I'm going to show you 10 different ways that you could use Google Forms in the classroom with your students today. So for each of these 10 examples tonight, I have created not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5 sample forms to show you, all right? And I've used a variety of formatting options, question options. I've used a variety of different learning areas and subjects, etc., so that you can see those. If you would like to have a look at these yourself, you are more than welcome to. They are open to people, so you can respond to those if you'd really like to. Just head over and scan the QR code just here on the screen, and you'll be able to head to my Google Sheet, fingers crossed if I have set this up properly, so that you'll be able to have a look at those and access those. So let's dive in to these wonderful ideas tonight. So I'm going to do something that I do not normally do, but just head over to this Google Sheet just here. And I did just mention, did I set it up correctly? Yes, I did. Okay, excellent. Woo! I have passed. All right, so our first way to use Google Forms, weekly reflections. What a great way to use a Google form to capture some information and some data from your students. So my first example here is a weekly learning highlight, where your students identify their highlights of the week, what they learned and what they enjoyed in class. So let's jump in, have a look at this form. So here we are, a very simple form, 3 questions. They all require written responses in this particular case, but how simple is that? A really simple way to capture some data, to see what your students have taken away from your class and what they have been learning in class this week. So that is our first example, all right? Really simple. And I told you, these are not complicated examples tonight. All right, our second one is a goal and progress tracker. So we might ask our students to create some goals, and here is a chance for them to track their progress when it comes to achieving those particular goals in the classroom. So this one, you can see I have changed it a little bit. We have a different color palette. I have actually used a different font. We have some multiple choice options. We have some written options. Again, it's a little bit longer than the previous example, but here we go. Another example of a really simple Google form looking at a weekly reflection that your students might be able to complete in the classroom. All right, our third weekly reflection example, looking at challenges and solutions that perhaps your students have faced during the week or as part of a unit of work. So let's dive in and have a look at this one. I know I'm going super fast, but we've got 50 to get through. Again, a different color palette. Okay, I have bolded the questions this time just to change it a little bit because I wanted to show you how flexible Google Forms is when it comes to being able to create something that is representative of you in your classroom with your students. So we have 3 questions here. Again, they're all written responses. You could definitely change that so that there was some other option for your students to be able to respond to. All right, weekly reflection number 4 example is peer and teacher feedback. So getting your students to reflect on feedback that they may have received from their peers or even yourself as the classroom teacher. So let's dive into this one. Again, very simple, but you can see that I have made a different change here. Not only is it the color, I have added a header image. Again, written responses, something I didn't think about when I created this, but that's really intriguing that all of these weekly reflections require written responses, something that I might change if I was to go back into these forms and change them again. All right, our last example of a written or a weekly reflection is an emotional check-in. Now, you'll see this particular concept appear in a couple of these different examples tonight in different formats. So maybe you just want to see how your students are tracking at the end of the week. Maybe it's been an assessment week or an exam week, and you just want to see how your students are tracking, or you just want to track them each week over a term or a semester just to see what's going on. Again, we have some different color options here. I've tried to make it a little bit playful with our train at the top. This time we have a multi-option question here for our students to be able to access, and then a couple of written responses there that our students can complete. So there, we already have one really cool way that we could use Google Forms in the classroom to conduct some weekly reflections with our students. So simple, but there's so much that you can gather from this information. All right, idea number 2, exit tickets. Exit tickets are amazing tools. If you have access to devices, you might like to use Google Forms to create some exit tickets that you could use in your classroom. So let's have a look at exit ticket example number 1, reflections and takeaways from your lesson of the day or the week or the term or the month or whatever you'd like to do. Okay, so let's have a look at this one here. Just seeing what our students have learned throughout your lesson. Again, very simple. We've got a nice blue color palette there. We've got some books on a bookshelf. Okay, we've got a couple of questions that require students to respond. But down the bottom, how cool is this? This is a new option from Google here and Google Forms. Is we can give some thumbs up. How cool is that? Using those emojis, having a little bit of fun with this in the classroom. All of these don't have to be boring. You can do a lot with Google Forms to create really cool ways to use this in the classroom. All right, exit ticket example number 2. Maybe we want to do some polling. We want to check our students' understanding, and we're going to use that to help guide us to the next component or the next skill that we're going to teach in our classroom here. So again, look, this one is a pretty simple one. If I might say it, it's a little bit boring, okay? But we have our top takeaways there, clearly outlined, takeaway 1, 2, 3. And then we have an option down the bottom for our students to indicate their understanding of the concept that they have been looking at in class. So, excuse me. You can choose that there. That's another type of question that I haven't shown you just yet. But how simple is that? Another way for our students to be able to reflect their understanding and their learning through a simple exit ticket. All right, exit ticket example number 3, a creative challenge feedback. So you might ask your students to respond to a quick challenge related to your lesson, and then you can provide them with feedback on their output later on in another session. So here we go. Okay, this time I've gone into my English background. So maybe we've been looking at metaphors or analogies. Okay, I'm asking my students to provide me with an example. And maybe you might ask them to show how they could use this in the real world. So making some connections from their learning in the classroom to the real world so that we can actually show students that what we're doing here in the classroom has relevance, even though they may think it does not. So there we go. Another really simple form, but a really cool way to use it with your students to check their understanding in the lesson. All right, example number 4, a mood meter check-in. So we've already had a very similar one to this where we have checked our students' kind of emotional status. Let's have a look at this example here. Okay, oh, look at this one. I love this one. How cool is this? So maybe we want our students just to express their emotions and reflections on their learning. So here we have the option to look at this. How are you feeling today? Select an emoji. How cool is that? So select an emoji that represents their feelings. Okay, so again, we're bringing in some of that kind of, cool poppy stuff with the emojis to really create a vibrant, enticing, engaging form here. And then down the bottom, we just have a little reflection here, a written reflection from our students about what was the most exciting part of the lesson. So again, super simple, but there's so much that you can collect from this. There's so much information that might be really helpful for you. All right, our very last exit ticket example is a quick quiz recap. We could always do these with our classes. What have we been learning today? So let's have a look at this quick quiz recap. Okay, so use this particular form to complete this particular quiz. Okay, maybe we're looking at something in maths, maybe area or perimeter. Maybe we're doing some algebra. We're doing something in science or geography, maybe English. Okay, you can create a really simple, quick quiz. All right, we have some multiple choice here. Okay, we have a written response. We have a true, false option here. All right. So many ways. This is what I want to show you. All right. There's so many ways to use Google Forms that basically, if you can think of it in your mind, you can probably create it in Google Forms. So they're the first 10, okay, examples of how we could use Google Forms in the classroom. Now, I've just popped myself back up here. I don't normally like to put myself up so much, but I'm just closing those 10 because they are taking up a lot of space in my browser. So let's take those away. Let's hope I get back to the right page. All right, so let's head into the third way that we could use Google Forms in the classroom. I'm just going to take a sip of water. I don't normally, but I have been talking a lot today at school. All right, the third way that we could use Google Forms in the classroom are for film reviews. Now, this was a really cool one when I created this, and if we have time at the end, I'm going to show you how I created most of these, and I'm going to tell you that it was not all me, okay? There was definitely help from another amazing tool. So the first one here is a character deep dive. So maybe we ask our students to analyze a character's development, looking at their traits, etc. And then we get our students to respond to that using a form. So rather than using a Google form or rather than using some other kind of particular application, we use a Google form. So here we go. We've got our character name. We've got a question asking for 3 key traits. Okay. This particular example is from Katniss from the Hunger Games. So how do you rate, Katniss's role as a leader or as a something, something, something? Again, you can choose that, and a couple more written responses there. So a really great way to get some data from your students, and then maybe the next lesson you bring that up and you say, it's really interesting that most of you said that Katniss was about a 3 when it came to being a leader, but then we did have a couple of outliers who didn't think Katniss was actually a true representation of being a leader. So some really interesting ways to collect data that you can then share with your students. All right, our next example is an alternative ending creator. So this is where we might get our students to do a little bit of brainstorming about some alternative endings to a particular film that maybe you've been looking at in class. These examples are related to the Hunger Games. So if you see that and you go, why is the Hunger Games coming up? That is why. So this is another really great way to see and collect all of those ideas from your students that you can then share in another way in the next lesson. So again, we've got some written responses. Okay. And we have another option down here just to really get our students thinking about that particular idea. So how simple, but how cool is that? All right, our third example here is a film and theme analysis. So if you are a bit of an English or language arts teacher, maybe you get your students to be having a look at how some of those themes have been communicated in the film. Okay, again, a couple of different types of questions here. We've got some written responses. We've got a star rating there, which I think is really cool. That comes from that emoji one as well, which is really, really, really fun. And then we have an open-ended question here at the end. Okay, so we have those options just there for our students to complete so that we can start to assess their understanding of some of those themes that have been explored in the film. All right, number 4 is director's vision review. So here we might get our students thinking about those directorial choices, that cinematography, the sound, the scene composition of the film that you have been studying, okay, or the documentary that you're analyzing, okay. And again, a little form here to collect some feedback from your students that you can then use to maybe direct the next lesson or the next skill that you're going to explore with your students. And the final example of film reviews, okay, some film trivia. So Our forms don't always have to be reflections and this and this and this. Let's have some fun. Let's test your students' understanding of the film or documentary that you've been studying with a little bit of trivia. Okay, let's do a little bit of fun. Okay, maybe you make this into a competition. All right, so which district does Katniss belong to? Okay, who gave her the Mockingjay pin? All right, a couple of different questions. Can you add more? Absolutely. Is this really simple? Yes, but it is just an example of what you can do with Google Forms in the classroom with your students. And I can tell you that this form probably took about 5 minutes maximum to create, okay? And again, I can reuse it, and reuse it time after time with all the different students that I teach. All right, so that is our third idea on how we could use Google Forms in the classroom. So far, we've had 15 really simple forms, but 15 different ways that you could engage your students in all of your different learning areas that you might teach in your classroom. All right, the next one, this is going back to something we've already kind of alluded to today, and we're having a look at some ready-to-learn scales. So we know that checking in with our students is really important, and it's probably just as important as that academic learning component that we are there for. Checking in with our students and having a look at their ready-to-learn and willingness to learn is really important. So our first one here is an emoji readiness checker. Okay, emojis, a great visual way to engage our students. Okay, with this one here, I am going to explain a couple of things why I actually added more to it than I was originally going to put into it. So we have which emoji best represents your feeling about today's lesson. Then I've just popped in a couple of other questions here. So in my particular school, we work on a 2-week cycle when it comes to our timetable. So I'm just asking my students to identify which week this particular lesson is taking place in, what day of the week, and what period of the day. So my thinking behind this particular example is I would use that data to track my students, and I might look at this data after the week and go, do you know what? Period 5 on Friday is not a great day for us. Most of my students are choosing tired, so I'm going to probably not have a so heavy content lesson in that particular period because my students just can't hack it because it's the end of the week. So it's a great way for you to collect really useful information that might be informative for your teaching. All right, the next one here is a readiness reflection scale. So students are going to reflect and identify their particular position on this scale. So let's have a look at this one here. Very simple, a simple 1 to 5. How ready are you for today's lesson? Okay, maybe I'm in the middle. I'm doing okay, but I'm not great. Simple. Again, some data that's going to be really informative and really useful for you to use and track. All right, my third example here is an energy level quick poll. Okay, so maybe we're just asking our students, hey guys, welcome to class. How are you feeling today? All right, let's head on to our ready to learn energy scale. I want you to choose 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, how many options you have. Boom, get started. The lesson is ready. All right, so obviously if you come in and your students, most of them are distracted and tired, maybe you think about adjusting what you're going to be looking at in that lesson there. All right, our next one is an interactive readiness check-in quiz. Okay, let's dive into this one so we can have a look at this. Okay, so what do you remember from the last lesson? What particular needs would you like to focus on today? And how confident are you about today's lesson? So maybe you're introducing something to your students that is brand new, that's complicated, okay, and you can gauge your students using this particular readiness to learn scale. All right, and the last example here is our traffic light check-in. Okay, again, I love this one because I've gone back to those emojis. So really simple. Okay, guys, what is your status for today's lesson? Are you green, yellow, or red? head over to your form and just pop that in there right now. If you are yellow or red, can you just let me know why you are feeling that way today? Okay, you're not going to be in trouble. It's just going to help me make sure that the lesson is right for you. So popping that in there, super simple. Again, you're able to collect some wonderful data and information that you'll be able to use to support your students. All right, let's head on to our next example here, self-reflections. Self-reflections are obviously amazing. Okay, they can be linked back to that weekly reflection that we talked about earlier. Perhaps we have our students complete a daily goal tracker. Okay, so maybe we get our students to create and determine a goal at the beginning of the lesson, and then at the end of the lesson, okay, they can go and reflect on whether or not they have been able to meet that goal and how they are feeling. You can see here again, the color's different. I've changed the fonts. All right, we've got a nice header there to make it a little bit personable. So we've got some different ways of presenting these forms to our students. All right, because we are definitely going to run out of time tonight, I'm not going to show you all of these examples, but you are able to go and have a look at these yourself so that you can see just some of these different ways that you can actually create a Google form and how you can use it with your students in your classroom. All right, let's go and have a look just at another one of our self-reflections. So I'm actually going to head down here to this assessment reflection prompt. So maybe after your students have completed an assessment or an assignment, we might get them to do a little bit of personal reflection because we know that is a great way of identifying what they have achieved and what they need to continue to work on. Again, super simple. We've got a rating scale here. We've got some written reflection questions there so that our students can start to reflect on their learning. All right, let's keep going. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more wonderful ideas to share with you tonight. So let's dive into our fifth. I think we're up to the fifth. Wonderful example, which is student surveys. Now, student surveys are really useful, powerful feedback tools. Yes, look, I know that some of us find feedback quite overwhelming and daunting. Okay, I know that. But it does really help us continue to grow and improve. So our first example here is a lesson reflection. If you'd like to get your students to provide a little bit of reflection on their learning throughout your lesson. Again, really simple. Okay, what was the most interesting part? Okay, we've got a scale option and we've got a few more options there for our students to select to complete that particular form. Okay, in the example, which you can go and access this Google sheet to have a look at these, okay, we have a tech tool experience survey. So maybe you start to ask your students about some of those tech tools that you've been using in class. Did they like them? Were they effective? Should they be part of our tech teach, your tech teacher toolkit? All right, that was a big tongue twister. So there's so many ways that you can go and use Google Forms to survey your students to get and gather really valuable information. All right, let's head on to our next one. I am really mindful of the time. That is why I am smashing through these. And I really encourage you to go and have a look at these sample forms that I have created. All right, I will pop the QR code back up and it will be in the recording of this session tonight. So you can go and have a look at those so that you can see some of those 50 ways that I have created. All right, the next way that we could use Google Forms are for quick quizzes. Now, these ones, I'm going to show you a couple of these because this is a really cool way to use forms. It might be at the start of a lesson, it might be during a lesson, it might be at the end of a lesson as your exit ticket. So the first one here I just made, and this is for my maths friends, a really simple multiple choice revision quiz here. Super simple. Basically, here are some multiple choice questions and you just give me the answer. Simple, Okay, nothing earth-shatteringly difficult or amazing with that particular example. I have one here looking at the 8 parts of speech if you're an English or language arts teacher. Okay, I have one here looking at some general knowledge of Australia, because if you haven't actually noticed, I am an Australian, all right, down here in Australia. So that one is there. We've got some facts about animals, all right. This one here, I could see this one being used with my primary school colleagues, and I've kind of tried to do that here with these emojis, but I could see some of those visual image type responses being used here to help guide and support those younger students to complete this. All right, so there's a whole range of different ways that you could use Google Forms for quick quizzes in the classroom. All right, we have 1, 2, 3 more wonderful ways that I want to show you this evening before we wrap up episode number 11. Now, the next one, which is example number 8, is very similar to our film reviews, which I showed you a little bit earlier up here, okay? And these are very similar, but this time, rather than looking at exploring a film, we're looking at a novel. So again, we have our character deep dive, we have our quotes and themes, okay? We have a creative critic, all right? We have the option to look at exploring and creating a book trailer, which is something that I have done in the past with our teacher librarian at my particular school, and we've looked at that, which has been an outstanding success, or even a peer recommendation form. So let's have a look at that one. So we can start to gather some peer reviews that we might display in our particular library or our particular area for our students to go and have a look at. So again, 5 really simple ways to use Google Forms in the classroom to look at something like novels that you have been reading or novels that your students have been reading and engaging in. All right, the last 2 examples, you're probably going to go, Tristan, why have you done this? Because really, aren't these the same? And I'm going to say you are absolutely correct. So my last 2 examples, and it is something that I have used Google Forms for in the past, are for pre and post assessments. So obviously, if we are conducting a pre or post assessment with our students, it should be the same form that we are using for the pre-assessment as well as the post-assessment. So you might be looking just here and you might be going, Tristan, why have you got 5 different pre-assessments and 5 different post-assessments? That is a great question, and this is the reason why. So I've created 5 different pre-assessment examples just here with 5 different kind of subject or learning areas that you might be involved with or you might have taught before. And then I have actually created 5 different post-assessments from some different subject areas, looking at different concepts to show you how you can actually use this in a myriad of ways. And I am going to be completely truthful here. A lot of these are secondary ideas, okay, because I am a high school teacher myself. That is where I am currently teaching. So that is why most of these ideas here for the pre and post assessment are definitely going to be more secondary based, because I can see the information that you would be gathering from these pre and post assessments would probably be a little bit more applicable to some elements of secondary learning and just checking on our students' knowledge and things like that. So there are another 10 wonderful ways that you could use Google Forms for a pre-assessment with your students as well as a post-assessment. Can you use it in a primary school, an elementary school? Absolutely. I am not saying you can't, but these examples probably are skewing more towards secondary teachers and secondary subject learning areas. So there we go. There are 50 examples of how you can use Google Forms in the classroom with your students. 10 different ways: weekly reflections, exit tickets, film reviews, ready to learn scales, even though that says ready to learn, scrape there. Okay, that let's fix that up and just pretend that that was never wrong. All right, we've got self-reflections. We have student surveys. We have quick quizzes. We can create book reviews and look at those novels. And we could use Google Forms for pre and post assessments. 10 ways, 50 examples in the last 55 minutes of how we can use Google Forms in the classroom. So that's just a really quick, simple introduction. As I mentioned earlier, if you can think it up here, you can create it. You can use Google Forms in the classroom with your students to engage them, to gather information, to look at those trends, and to help you plan what you are going to look at and explore next. All right, I did mention I wanted to give you a little tip and trick so that you can see how you can make your life much easier when it comes to creating forms. And here is my big confession. Okay, I did not make any of these forms myself. Yes, I admit it. I actually used the power of ChatGPT. All right. And I am definitely not telling people to ignore this tool. We have a myriad of wonderful AI tools out there now, and they are there to support you as a teacher. Do not be scared of them. They are there to help you become more efficient, effective, and make life easier for you. So I used I used ChatGPT to help me create these forms over the weekend. All right, so I just popped in what I wanted it to create. Okay, obviously I contextualized it based on the presentation tonight, and then it provided me with the information. As I mentioned, these are just very simple and generic. All right, you could dive in further. Here's some of the questions I asked it to create for the post-test examples. All right, so don't be scared of using AI to help you create the questions that you can use in these Google Forms documents. All right, it is there to support you as an educator, so don't be scared. All right, whether you're using ChatGPT, whether you're using Gemini, School AI, TeachMate, okay, Magic School, whatever you're using, use it. Okay, they are there to support you, to help you become an even more efficient and effective educator in the classroom. So make sure that you head over and check out all of those really amazing and simple forms that we created for you to have a look at. I'm so sorry we've run out of time and we haven't been able to go and have a look at all of them. Again, I have over planned just like I normally do in the classroom, and we've just run out of time, but they are all there and accessible for you to look at so that you can get some inspiration when it comes to using Google Forms in the classroom. All right, so let's find this page. We're almost at the end of tonight's presentation. I can't believe that we are almost at the end of episode 11. It has been a whirlwind. All right, so there we go. Google Forms. It's clear that I love Google Forms. It's clear that I love Google Workspace in general, if you haven't picked that up already. So go and have a look. Go and see how you could use Google Forms in the classroom. There are an endless amount of different ways that you could use it with your students today. So head over to Google Workspace and see what you can do with Google Workspace in your classroom, in your school, in your context today. All right, well, that brings us to the end of episode 11. We are only just over time, which is fantastic after our little hiccup earlier. I'm going to have to make sure that I check all of that much earlier than I did tonight. All right, if you haven't, we would love it for you to stay connected with us here at Evolve EdTech. Please head over to the Evolve EdTech website, evolveedtech.com. It's where you'll find all of our resources, okay, our videos. We have a whole range of tips, tricks, and tools for you to access on our website. So please head over there and check that out. As I mentioned earlier, we would love it if you liked this video and you subscribe to the Evolve EdTech YouTube channel. We are just a small community here at the moment, but I would love to grow it. So please share, and please let other teachers and educators know about us, because we're here to support you and share our love of EdTech with you. You can also stay connected with us on our social channels. We are on Facebook, Instagram. You can catch up with us on Pinterest, and we are starting to get a little bit more into TikTok. So you can also catch up with us on our TikTok page. All right, as I mentioned, if you haven't caught up on our previous episodes, you can do that. I'm going to move myself just over here so that if you are trying to scan that QR code, you're able to do that. So please head over to our Evolve EdTech YouTube channel to catch up on our previous 10 episodes. If you head over and you go, those thumbnails look a little bit different, that's because we have given this particular playlist a little bit of a glow up. So those thumbnails are no longer there. You won't find my beautiful face anymore, but you will find all of those previous episodes from season 1 of Innovative EdTech for you to have a look at. All right, and we would just like to remind you, we also have over 80 plus digital templates which you can download and access for free today. So we have created a whole range of digital templates, and I'm just going to move myself again, that you can go and access. They're available as PNG files, JPEGs, and PDFs, so that you can use those in your classroom with your students today. So head over to evolveedtech.com/templates to go and explore our 80 plus digital templates, which you can now get for absolutely free. All right, and now this leads me into my most exciting announcement. I talked about this last month, and that is I would love to invite you to the inaugural Tech Ready Teacher Digital Conference. This is a 100% free digital conference in 2025, where we are going to share 10 wonderful pre-recorded sessions with you over 5 days in January 2025. So you'll be able to access these whenever you like, wherever you like, okay? And they're exploring a whole range of EdTech tips, tricks, and tools to help you in the classroom. This has been a pet project of mine for the past 6 or so months, and I'm really excited to bring this to you in January 2025. It is 100% free in 2025, so please jump over and head to thetechreadyteacher.com or scan that QR code just there to get your free ticket and to check out what those 10 sessions at the conference would involve. We would love to see you there, and I am so excited for this initiative, and I look forward to continuing it for many, many, many years to come. So please head over and share that with your colleagues as well, and be part of the inaugural Tech Ready Teacher Digital Conference community. All right, and that brings us to the end. If you have made it to the end, thank you so much. I know that was a really quick session tonight, and I appreciate that I've sped through that, but I encourage you to go and check out those Google Forms. Go and check out that particular Google Sheet with all those examples in it if you'd like to, just to see what you could do in the classroom with Google Forms today. So that brings us to the end of episode 11. We have one episode left for 2024, and it is a bumper episode, and it's also a very special episode if you join us on Monday, the 9th of December. So on Monday, the 9th of December, we will have a very special sneak peek of the 12 tech tips of Christmas for 2024. So if you don't know what the 12 tech tips of Christmas are, this is a special series that we host in December from the 13th to the 24th, where we have one tech tip or a tip, trick, or tool each day, kind of like the 12 days of Christmas. Last year in 2023, we had the 12 AI tools of Christmas, which you can check out on our YouTube channel. This year, we're heading back to tech tips, and we're going to share some of those with you. Won't be all 12 of them, but we're going to share some of those with you a little bit early before the rest of the public get to join us. So join us on Monday, the 9th of December, 2024 at 7 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time based on Melbourne, Australia for episode number 12 of Innovative EdTech. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us tonight for another cracker episode. It has been wonderful seeing so many people join us tonight on the live stream. And if you're on the recording, thank you so much. Again, make sure you like our video and like our videos here on our Evolve EdTech YouTube channel. Subscribe to our channel, share it with your friends, okay? Share it with your colleagues, and let's grow together because we're all here to have fun with EdTech in the classroom. My name is Tristan. Thank you so much for joining us, and I will catch you again in December for episode 12 of Innovative EdTech. Until then, everybody, stay safe.